Gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? The show starts in 3, 2, 1, go.
What is going on, CaneSport, and good morning to you all. It is Tuesday, June 4th. I'm Izubee Charles, joined by Stephen Wagner, and welcome to Good Morning CaneSport. We have a ton of stories on the site for you this morning to check out, and we're going to start with one that Stephen worked day and night for. Wags, 'tis the season, and we're not talking about the holidays. It is mock class time, and we take a look at the 2025 class and who we think will eventually be Hurricanes come December during signing day. We went through all the position groups, so we're going to start off with quarterback. We already know Luke Nichols committed in this class and is a firm commit right now. He's a guy Miami identified really, really early, and we think he's going to be a Cane at the end of the day. Steven, what are your thoughts on Nichols and his commitment to the Canes?
Yeah, this is for all of our readers that keep asking about Georgia. Don't ask about Georgia. He's going to play for Miami. He's not going to Georgia. Georgia is not a threat here. Georgia hasn't even offered him. He's fine. He's solid. He's good. He's a Category 5 Hurricane. I literally had someone tell me he's a Category 5 Hurricane. He is going to play at Miami. The only way that I see him not playing at Miami is if Miami goes 0-12, loses every single game, has the most disappointing season in the history of college football, and the entire coaching staff gets fired. And I got to say, I think that's pretty damn unlikely to happen. He's going to be a Cane.
Yeah, I think this is a no-brainer too. Miami offense coordinator Shannon Dawson absolutely loves this kid, and it's hard not to. Threw for over 3,900 yards last year, 39 touchdowns with 5 interceptions. Kid's a proven leader, led Milton to a state title in Georgia's toughest division. I think this kid has Miami written all over him. He was rocking Miami chains, earlier this year in Battle Miami when he won the tournament. Awesome kid, and like Steven said, I think this kid's a Category 5 Hurricane to be Cane at the end of the day. So that's a quick one. Let's move on to the running backs. Right now, Gerard Pringle is a lone running back committed in this year's class, but the Hurricanes are looking to bring in a second running back. There's a few names on the table, like Usman Kroma from Georgia. We have Shakai Mills-Knight out of Tennessee, and the local guy, Byron Lewis. Steven, you think Byron Lewis is going to be that second back in the class. Why is that? Why are you putting Byron Lewis in Miami's 2025 class?
Yeah, I do think he's going to be the second back. And so, I have a couple reasons here. One, Shakai Mills-Knight. I think that there's a good chance that he could end up elsewhere. And Usman Kroma, he's probably not going to make a decision until sometime during the actual season. Byron Lewis, on the other hand, he's been very, very quiet on when he's going to make his decision, although I've been told that it could potentially happen later this summer. So that's something that we're keeping a very, very close eye on. Right now, it's really a battle between Miami and Florida State. He really likes FSU. Obviously, FSU and Miami have both invested very heavily in the connection to American heritage. But I think at the end of the day, Miami, being Miami and being the closest school to Lewis, and obviously really wanting Lewis in this class, I think the Canes are going to do what they need to do to be able to keep him home. FSU was the trendy team for a little while. Miami was the trendy team earlier this spring. Seemed like things went very, very well on his first official visit. He has Novi set up to Florida State later this summer. And I do expect it to be one of those two schools, but I'm going to stand by the RPM that I put in earlier this spring, and I'm going to say that it'll be Miami.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. I think at the end of the day, Miami beats out, Florida State and Wisconsin, which he's taking that official visit to this upcoming weekend. I think the race between Florida State and Miami is going to be super, super, super close. Like you mentioned, both schools have invested a lot in American heritage, but I think Miami does edge them out at the end. But I have to add this as well. If I am Miami, out of those three backs, and Lewis, Kroma, and Mills-Knight, I'm going all in on Mills-Knight. I think he is one of the best running backs in the country. I know he's a 3-star. He's ranked in the 500s, but the kid is 6'2", 210 pounds, runs a sub-11 100-meter dash, and kid can run around you, run through you, over 1,000 rushing yards in just 8 games, and, one of the best schools in Tennessee. I absolutely love this kid. Love all three running backs. Me personally, I'm taking Mills Knight if I had the choice, but I do think at the end of the day, Lewis is a hurricane. Mills Knight has about 6 more official visits left after this recent one at Miami, so a lot of schools in play there. And I think it's going to be kind of first come, first serve. And I think Lewis will be the first one ready to commit to Miami. And I think he eventually becomes a Cane with Gerard Pringle. So stay on the offensive side of the ball, move to wide receiver. Steven, you put Tyler Williams, Cortez Mills, and Joshua Moore in this class. A lot of receivers on Miami's recruiting board. Why do you decide to go with those three? And I'm going to give my opinion on the wide receivers after that.
Yeah, so Cortez, I think right now Clemson's kind of the trendy team after he went to that OV this past weekend. But I think that Miami, having their official visit scheduled where it is, that they are going to be his last OV. I think that Miami is going to be able to capture some recruiting momentum during that last visit. And I think that's ultimately going to end up in a commitment. If Miami knocks his official visit out of the park, I really, really, really think he'll be a hurricane. And Miami is known for being really, really good at official visits. I mean, the only OV I can think of, over the last 2 years that I've been here that hasn't gone really well was Justin Scott. And Miami was still able to chip away at him and ultimately get his commitment. Cortez probably committing sometime later this summer, July or August. And I think as long as Miami nails that OV, I think there's a great chance he's a hurricane. Tyler Williams, I'm kind of counting on Miami to be able to maintain the momentum that it seems like they kind of created for themselves on this past weekend's official visit. Tyler was a guy that Miami eyed earlier this year. Wasn't hyper intensely recruited prior to this year, but after that big breakout junior season, I mean, he just saw his stock absolutely skyrocket. Now he's a 4-star top 300 receiver. Started out as a guy that seemed like not that many people really knew about, but after that really, really strong junior year, has a lot of schools hard after him. I think Miami's going to do what they need to do there to be able to grab Williams. And then Joshua Moore. Local shoot. He has to be 6'4". I want to say 6'4", 6'5", wide out, very long, very lanky. Really has the ideal mold that you want a wide receiver to have. Think like he's almost kind of built like Jeremiah Smith, but a little bit taller. Now, no disrespect to Josh Moore, but maybe not quite as talented as Jeremiah, because Jeremiah was probably the best high school receiver, easily one of the best high school receivers ever. But Moore, another kid, 4-star, top 60 recruit. I can't see Miami letting him slip away, especially after the way that they've prioritized him here over these last couple months. Kevin Beard and Shannon Dawson made a trip together to his school to check up on him. So I think that there's the way that he's been prioritized, the relationship he's built with Miami, I think there's a very good chance he ends up a Cane as well.
Yeah, I like those 3 picks, but I'm gonna have to say not so fast on Josh Moore. For some reason, I just don't feel like he's gonna end up as a hurricane. I love Mills. I think he's gonna be Miami Hurricane. Tyler Williams is gonna come off the board in September. I think he's gonna be Miami Hurricane. His father loved that visit, and he said some great things about it. Just more kind of I'm iffy on that. I want to bring in 3 guys that a lot of people have been hearing about over the last few months. That's Vernell Brown, Jamie French, and Dallas Wilson. Dallas obviously committed to Oregon. French has been, an Ohio State lean, a Tennessee lean, a Texas lean as of late. But Miami's always been in that top 3 for him. And I think they, if they have a killer OV with him, that'll be a good indication if Miami can land him. Vernell Brown, another guy Miami's been high on since last summer, and they continue to be, one of the top schools in the recruitment. I don't think Miami's his top school yet in any of those 3 guys' recruitments, but I think at the end of the day, out of French, Brown, and Wilson, I do think Miami lands one of those guys. I do think Georgia, Florida State are 2 schools that I think Joshua Moore may end up at, even Florida. I've been seeing a lot of buzz around Florida's name, but like you said, Dawson and Beard have prioritized him. I think he's a great prospect, but I don't think he ends up in the class. And I do think either French, Wilson, or Brown end up being Miami Hurricanes at the end of the day. So a lot of wide receivers, on the board. I feel like this is the most wide open position group because, obviously Miami had their only receiver waiting, Charles decommit, but I do think that is the most wide open position group. Going to the next position group where I think is shut down Tight end, Miami has Brock Schott, Luca Gilbert. Cody Woodell identified his two guys, got them on the board, and looks like they're done. Steven, what are your thoughts on Miami's two tight ends in the 2025 class?
They're done. Those two guys are solid. Auburn's still trying to make a little bit of a push with Brock Schott, but kind of a respectful push. They're not really pestering Brock or harassing him or anything like that. So I think he's still very solid in Miami, and Luca Gilbert shut down his recruitment completely the moment that he committed to Miami. Both of those guys are going to be Hurricanes, barring something really, really unforeseen and drastic happening.
Yeah, I have to agree with you on that 100%. You got Brock Schott, who's more of the H-back tight end. You got, Luka Gilbert, who's more of that end-line guy. Big physical force, kind of a sixth offensive lineman on that line for you. So two different type of guys, but they're two great prospects that Miami landed and got in that class early. Moving on to offensive line. Right now, Miami just has TK Mew committed in that class. But a few names, Steven, that you have in this class. One that a lot of people would be happy to see flip from Florida State is four-star offensive lineman Solomon Thomas out of Jacksonville. We have S.J. Alfatu. I always have a hard time saying his last name out of Bishop Gorman. Then we have a pair of three-star offensive linemen, Gabe Smith and Jaden Wilkerson, who took his OV to Miami last weekend. Steven, quick look at those names. Why do you think those five guys end up as Miami Hurricanes at the end of the day?
Yeah, Mew, he's solid in Miami. Doesn't need a lot of explanation there. But then some of the other guys that I mentioned on the list, Solomon Thomas, Miami's been shipping away, been very, very present in his recruiting picture. They really believe that he's one of the best offensive linemen in the state, if not the best offensive lineman in the state. They think that they are going to be able to, finally put themselves in a position where he's going to have to sit down and think to himself, man, do I want to go to Florida State or, am I going to end up at Miami? Because he has a lot of respect for Cristobal and Mirabal. Thinks they're both really good recruiters, really good people, really good coaches. And they've done work winning his family over too. They've done work. They've put in work with his mom, with his grandma, with everyone who's come with him on these different visits. They have given him a lot to think about. And I think this race is a little bit tighter than some may think it is. And I think at the end of the day, I do think that Miami is going to give themselves a really awesome shot to be able to flip him from Florida State. And some of the other guys, real quick. S.J. Alafay-Tuli, the interior lineman out of Bishop Gorman, one of the best interior offensive linemen in the country. I think right now he's number 4, number 5, something like that in the On3 industry ranking. I think that this is going to be about Miami maintaining that Bishop Gorman pipeline that they've had in recent years. Miami has done a really, really good job recruiting Bishop Gorman really since Mario Cristobal showed up. And they started things off with Cyrus Moss. Last year they were obviously able to land Elijah Lofton. I think this year they're going to be able to get Alafay-Tuli. A lot of respect there for Cristobal and Mirabal, a lot of belief in their ability as coaches. And he also sees the opinions that some of his former teammates at Bishop Gorman have of Cristobal as a head coach. And, it speaks very, very, they've spoken very glowingly, and I think it speaks well to kind of the job that Miami's done recruiting that school. And then Jaden Wilkerson, Miami has been a top school for him for quite some time. I think he also has official visits set up later this summer. I believe he's going to get a chance to go up to Rutgers, who's been on him for quite some time. But I really, really think that Miami's going to have a great shot here. And then Gabe Smith, the last guy that I'm including kind of in this mix, a lot like Wilkerson. Miami's a top 2 school for both of those guys. I do think that Miami's going to be able to win out in the end here. And these are both guys who Miami kind of identified early. And, Miami thinks that these are dudes who have the potential to be future stars, but no one else has really clicked to it yet. Miami's really trusting their personal evaluations on these guys.
Yeah, so like I said, love all the picks that you have on the O-line. I think Miami gets a good class, and brings in those 2 or 3 leading guys of the class, and then a few of those guys that people are underestimating, but they're high on. So always can trust Coach Alex Mirabal, Coach Mario Cristobal when it comes to O-linemen. And, I think this class will be a good indication of that as well. Switching to the defensive line, Steven, you had Nate Marshall, who's a Michigan commit, and ultimately flipping to Miami. Miami Central 4-star defensive lineman Randy Adarica, 4-star edge IOC Epinesa out of Illinois, and Tylen Lee out of the Panhandle. Steven, I'm going to start with this one. Love the picks, but I do have to throw Floyd Buchard in there. He recently came off his OV to Miami, and he had some great things to say. You had a chance to speak with him, and he sounded really good about the Hurricanes and where things stand. Always hard to see where kids really fit in right now with the first OV weekend, because they do have a lot of things to see in the summer. But I do like Floyd Buchard. And another name that I want to throw in there, Elijah Griffin, the #1 defensive lineman in the 2025 class. He took a spring visit to Miami, absolutely loved it. He's going to be back on campus this upcoming weekend for his official visit, and we're looking forward to seeing what he has to say about Miami. He only has 2 official visits this summer, with the first being to Miami. I think Miami's kind of a dark horse in this recruitment. Obviously, Georgia's the big favorite, the home state team. But I do think if Miami has a great OV with him and a great season, I think he can be in play for the Hurricanes. Steven, just what are your thoughts on those 2 guys and then the 4 guys that you put in the class?
There's a very, very good chance that Miami could give themselves a chance late for Elijah Griffin. Georgia's been the favorite for a while, but Miami should not be overlooked. And, Georgia cannot afford to overlook Miami. I think that'll be a fight. I think that'll be a fight to the end. Then Floyd Buchard, he was a guy who I did kind of toy with including here, but ultimately the reason that I left him out of this list is he's been a guy really through his whole recruitment who has kind of leaned toward whichever school he last visited is a school that really has momentum for him at the time. So coming off a visit to Miami, very, very high on Miami. Coming off a visit to Oklahoma, very, very high on Oklahoma. Coming off a visit to Florida, very, very high on Florida. And so I think that this one is a little bit trickier to figure out because it's kind of hard to figure out where things lie when the dust settles. Because, like I said, the school that he most recently visited is the school that kind of is the popular name at the moment. So I think it's going to – I think we're going to have a little bit of a hard time or a harder time figuring that one out and kind of waiting for everything to settle before he commits in late July or potentially later this season. Then some of the picks that I made, Jose Epinesa, younger brother of AJ Epinesa. I think Miami's doing a really, really good job with him. The Hurricanes have recruited the Midwest very, very well. And I think Miami is going to give themselves an awesome shot to pull one of the best in the country out of Edwardsville. That's up in Illinois. Obviously, a lot of the local schools have done really good jobs. Iowa, Illinois, they've obviously been after him, but some of the biggest programs in the country have been given their best shots, and Miami's been standing there this whole time and been keeping themselves right there in the mix. And so I think there's an awesome chance that Miami's going to be able to get him. That would definitely be a blue chip commit. Nate Marshall as well. Yeah, he's committed to Michigan, but Miami, I think this is going to be a lot like the Justin Scott commitment. I think Miami's going to chip away. And before you know it, the Hurricanes are going to be giving themselves a really, really good chance to go ahead and flip him from Michigan. They were able to do it with Elias Rudolph last year. They were able to flip a couple of guys from Ohio State last year too, and Jordan Lyle and Justin Scott. So I think that could be kind of a similar situation, especially also given how well Miami has recruited Chicago over the last couple of years. And then Tylen Lee. Right now it's between Miami, UCF, and Kansas. And I know, that sounds like kind of an unusual trio, but this is a guy who's really, kind of going off relationships and opportunity. And, let's be honest, Miami really offers the best of both. And then real quickly here, Randy Adarica. It seemed like there was a little bit of a lull during a point in February, but things have been straightened out. Him and the Hurricanes are on very, very good, they're on very good footing with each other. Everything seems to be right on track. I put in an RPM for Adarica back in February, whenever it seemed like Miami was the clear favorite, and I'm going to stick with that. I continue to feel good about where things sit with Adarica. I think he'll be a Cane too.
Yep, moving on to linebacker, you have Elijah Melendez sticking in the class despite Canes fans having heart attacks, seeing him visit a lot of other schools and post a lot of OV pictures and things like that. A local guy, Ezekiel Marcelin, 3-star linebacker out of Miami Central, and another flip, TJ Alford, who Miami narrowly missed out and is committed to Ohio State. Love those 3 picks. But 2 guys I want to also speak about is Gavin Nix out of IMG, a guy I think Miami is really, really in a good spot with, and another flip target that I'm not 100% sold on, but I do think Miami has a good chance because he's taking that OV's Jaden Perlott out of Buford, currently committed to Georgia. Steven, just talk about those 3 guys that you have in the class, and why do you think they end up being Miami Hurricanes real quick?
Yeah, real quick on Perlotti. He's been a little bit of Miami's been a little bit of a dark horse for him. But Derek Nicholson. And the same can be said for Gavin Nix, although Miami's been, a much, much better documented major contender for Nix. Hurricanes like him. He likes Miami. Derek Nicholson's done an awesome job building that relationship. So I think that there's a chance that Nix could end up a Hurricane. I'm right now, I believe that Perlotti is going to stick with Georgia. Of course, I mean, things change all the time. This is just a mock class. So, it's always difficult to project. But, kind of doing our best to go ahead and make those projections here. But looking at the guys who I'm including in my class, Ezekiel Marcelin, seemed like things went very, very well on his official visit to Miami this weekend. I made that RPM for him back in February. I'm continuing to stand by that prediction. I think that was a good prediction, and I think that it seems like Miami is still in the favorable position for him. TJ Alford. I think that Miami is kind of sneakily close to Ohio State in this recruitment. Miami, the gap between Miami and Ohio State was not very wide at all whenever he committed to the Buckeyes, and it's still not very wide. And I think, this may be a recruitment that's going to come down, a little bit more toward the actual season. And I think this is going to, I think that in-season results could definitely play a part here. But I do not think that Alford should be assumed solid to Ohio State, or that it should be assumed that Miami's going to let one of the best in Florida right up the road, has a ton of Miami ties, and his dad is even a Miami fan. I can't see Miami just letting him slip away. And then just real quickly, Elijah Melendez. Other schools are pushing. I think he's still going to be a Hurricane. He's got a lot of other programs after him. Got a lot of, Michigan, obviously, Auburn, some of the top programs that have been making those pushes. But I do think that he's going to end up a Cane.
Yeah, love those picks. Love those picks. To be watching linebacker recruitment over the next few months. We're going to end it with the defensive backs in the crown jewel of this class. Everybody knows the last name, but this is the next guy in line in that family. 5-star plus defensive back DJ Pickett. Steven, you have him leading that defensive back group alongside 4-star nickel Amari Wallace and unranked cornerback Aiden Anding, who's making some noise, and that battle is between Texas and Arkansas. I do want to add some guys to this list. I think Miami's in a great spot with those 3 guys, but I also want to throw in Ben Hanks to that mix out of Booker T. Washington, who I absolutely love, who the Hurricane staff also absolutely loves. And this might surprise some people. I do think Miami can pull off the flip for 4-star cornerback Jabari Antoine, who recently had his OV to Miami and will be back for a game day visit later this fall. I spoke about him a little bit on the show yesterday. He's a kid that, plays his cards to his chest pretty tight, but after that OV, he was smiling ear to ear after hearing Lance Guidry's plan for him and the Hurricanes' plan for him. Steven, talk about those 3 guys that you have in the class, Pickett, Wallace, and Anding, and why do you think they'll be Canes?
Yeah, and Chris Ewald as well. Mm-hmm. I left him out there for a second, but I'm definitely going to go ahead and include Ewald in this list. Right now it seems like it's coming down to Miami and Georgia. I think Miami's going to do what they need to do to be able to keep him home, to be able to keep him local. Four-star cornerback that Miami has done a very, very good job with. I think that the Hurricanes are going to be able to go ahead and hold on for him. I made that RPM for him a few months ago. Continue to feel all right about that. Not incredible, but I do feel all right about that. I think the Hurricanes are going to give themselves a real chance here whenever he makes that announcement later this month. I think as long as everything goes well in the official visit, I do think that he'll end up a Hurricane. But then obviously DJ Pickett is the biggest name that we're talking about in this draft or in this mock class. Number 4 overall prospect in the country, 5-star cornerback. Everyone agrees he's a 5-star, really elite player. Can play corner or safety. I mean, he's just an all-around dude in the secondary. For him, it's really going to come down to whether or not Miami can win this fall. If Miami can win the way that a lot of people think they can win, he'll be a Hurricane. If they don't, he won't be a Hurricane. And so this, for me, is almost kind of me betting that Miami's going to win big this fall, that they're going to be able to win 10+ games. They'll be able to be a contender in the ACC. They'll be able to give themselves a chance to make a run at the college football playoff, or maybe even sneak in the expanded field. Because remember, it's the top 12 teams now, so Miami's going to give themselves a very legitimate shot here. But then obviously Aiden Anding as well, an unranked cornerback that Miami's very high on. I think this is going to come down to Miami and Texas and who can make him feel the most at home. I think Miami set a very high bar on his official visit this weekend. Texas, he's going to visit Texas later this month. So it's really going to come down to, who's going to be able to give him that really homey feeling. And man, it's tough to find a more loving and caring and kind of warm, cozy feeling, or a staff that gives that warm, cozy feeling better than Miami's. And I mean that all the way down to like the lower ranking personnel guys. It really is a group recruiting effort, and they do that. Just as well as anyone in the country, truly. Like I said, DJ Pickett, probably the biggest name in the class. And then almost forgot Amari Wallace, the guy who I put an RPM in for back in February. I think that he'll be a Cane too. I like where Miami sits. I'm continuing to stand by that prediction. I'll continue to stand by that prediction for quite a while too.
Yeah, a ton of talented guys in this first mock that we have. We're 6 months out from the December signing period, but it's never too early to look at what guys we think will be in the class. I think Steven did a great job of doing that. I know a lot of people might say, hey, what about this guy? What about that guy? But it is very hard to predict 25 kids who will make a decision, or plus or more than that. So make sure to check that out. Let us know what you think about it. Also, we have a ton of other recruiting stories on the site this morning. This weekend, Miami had their first prospect camp and dished out a few offers to a handful of 2026 guys. We also caught up with the likes of Ben Hanks and Bryce Fitzgerald. So make sure to check out those stories if you haven't. In team news, we continue our countdown with the top 50 roster players on the Hurricane. We're at number 26 and Mr. Samson Pancake Concho Okunlola. So make sure to check that out. We also have another awesome feature on Miami quarterback Cam Ward, dating back to his wing T days of high school in Texas when he had one scholarship offer. Steven, you were the best wing T wide receiver ever to come out of Texas. I just want to get your quick thoughts about just seeing a quarterback like Cam Ward come from Texas, your home state, out of the wing T to one of the best quarterbacks in the country.
Man, all right. I kind of want to backtrack here a little bit. How about G.J. Kinney? Initially, or excuse me, not G.J. Kinney. He was the guy who succeeded Cam Ward's head coach at UIW. But how about his head coach at UIW, an FCS program in San Antonio, probably about 2.5-ish hours away from West Columbia, where Cam Ward grew up, which is a little bit closer to Houston. He sees this guy running a wing T offense and thinks, man, I bet he'd make a pretty good gunslinger. I bet that he has the tools to become a really good quarterback. So takes a chance on him, offers him, turns him into, a gunslinging air raid type quarterback at UIW. Coach ends up getting the job at Washington State, brings Cam Ward with him. Cam Ward absolutely tears it up, on a not hyper talented roster. I mean, man, you talk about talent evaluation. It's hard enough to evaluate quarterbacks as it is, and most of these guys, the top guys, are in these spread offenses. It's even more challenging to be able to evaluate these guys when they're in the wing tee and they're throwing maybe 10 passes a game. I remember, our wing tee offense in high school. We had one game where I think we had 8 pass attempts in the first half, and we were thinking to ourselves, man, I don't think we've ever aired it out like this before. So, man, you talk about talent evaluation. That is talent evaluation.
Yeah, Cam Ward coming to his last year of college football in Miami, looking to do big things before he heads off to the NFL, and we're hoping he does too. Awesome story, so make sure to check that out. Matt did a great job of talking about that, getting all the juice from his upbringing in West Columbia. That's all that we have for you guys for this episode of Good Morning CaneSport. For Stephen Wagner, I'm Izubee Charles. Thank you for starting your day off with us.